Pam is the CEO of a toxic waste cleanup company. She was having a lot of intergenerational issues, and it was hurting productivity a lot. Between the millennials, who were mostly the ones in the front line cleaning up the dangerous spills, and the boomer management. We tried bending our millennials to our boomer way of doing things, and it wasn't working. Why? Why wasn't it working? Matt is a Gen X entrepreneur, and he's interviewing Janet, who's 25, for his 2-year-old startup. And he's just started asking questions to assess her skills and fit. And she starts asking questions. How convinced are you that this is going to work? Why should I work at this company? He's kind of taken aback. She's making me convince her to work here? And this is the second time this has happened with a millennial. Why was Janet asking those questions? Whoever perspective that you related to, these are familiar stories of intergenerational disconnect. But why? Why are we challenging each other? Why are we misunderstanding each other? Why aren't traditional ways working? And we have lots of questions. Perhaps the most important question is not why aren't traditional ways working, but why are we still trying to use traditional ways? Who here uses one of these at their office? Nobody? Really? No, it's too slow, it's too clunky, and we have realized its limitations and we've moved on. We've adapted. But how about we put one of these in front of a couple of Gen Zs? Generation Z is age 3 to 23. So here we're going to see two 17-year-olds trying to work out how to use a rotary phone. Cue the video, please.
Okay, so go ahead and lift up the box. You have 4 minutes to dial that phone number.
That's it?
That's it. With that phone.
Wait, so you have to push it.
Kyle, move your butt over. I don't want your butt in the video.
Look,
there you go.
Look. It's all the way from here.
Yeah. 7.
Oh no, zero's all the way over. Crap, how do I restart?
Okay.
Yeah.
7. Then just fiddle it a little bit.
OK, all right. So it goes on like this for quite a long time. You can search for it on YouTube. It's very funny. They do actually work it out. One of them gets very frustrated, but they do work it out in the end. But what other legacy ways of operating are we actually still using in the workplace that could be as confusing as this to these young men if they started working at your company? And similarly with boomers, with some of the new technologies. A boomer using Snapchat. Now, he did actually work it out in the end, and he had some fun with it. But this can be a source of disconnects for us. New platforms, applications, and devices, they're connecting us like never before. We have extraordinary mobile computing power, allowing anyone to work from anywhere, enabling everyone to gather, generate, and share data at warp speed. And it's not going to slow down anytime soon. The length of time companies used to be on the S&P 500 used to be 50 years. Now it's 15 and decreasing. And the nature of work itself is evolving. Project work has increased 40-fold over the last 20 years. Work is more iterative, more fluid, less predictable. We all need to be more flexible. We all need to respond faster, collaborating across locations, generations, and blended teams as more freelancers and contractors are helping fulfill our changing business needs. And it's unfamiliar to all of us. We are all struggling to work out how to deal with this as the traditional rules and practices, some are becoming irrelevant or at least inadequate. And at the same time, we are each one of us is interpreting these changes in different ways according to our own individual context. Some of us are excited, or curious, or confused, or resisting. And these different interpretations are what are causing some of these misunderstandings, particularly under the stress of uncertain times. But what we want is to be able to work together across generations. We want to be able to understand this new environment. But it's more than that. Because right now, when we're looking ahead, we need to be able to figure out these new business conditions. We need to be able to work to develop effective new practices, ways of operating, and we need everybody's contributions and input to be able to do that. But how? We are looking at, I mean, somebody said to me, you know, how do we do this? Is there a sort of one workshop that's going to help us do it? It's not that simple. There are no bystanders in this new world of work. Each one of us, each generation needs to be important contributors to the solutions that are going to help us remain competitive, are going to help us thrive professionally, each one of us. And it isn't that obvious. What we need to do is actually reframe how we think about things. And instead of thinking about intergenerational challenges being problems that we need to overcome, we can look at these as being opportunities to gain knowledge and insight. We can see our different perspectives as being sources of new ideas, new solutions. And there are three basic steps that we can take in order to be able to work together more closely, use the beneficial insights from across all of our generations, and deal with the biggest situation that we're faced with. And those steps are to recognize the extent and the impact of the changes and our different contexts, interpretations, perspectives, and adapt our mindsets and approaches to be able to use the benefit of our differences in order to be able to adapt the ways that we're working for these new business conditions and support it with new types of management and support. And that way, progressing through these steps, we will actually be able to bridge our gaps, work more closely together, and focus on what is situational and not generational. And the key is empathy. Empathy is the ability to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and feel what the other person is going through. Remember Pam? Well, she started, and when she empathized with her millennial employees, she started to feel how unengaged they were because they didn't feel valued and included, even though they're the ones doing the dangerous work. She sensed their frustration because they had great customer feedback and they had good ideas that weren't being heard. And she also tapped into their ambition. They wanted to grow and get more sort of help developing their potential. And so what she did is empathizing with those perspectives, she took a more inclusive management approach, and she appointed one of the emerging millennial leaders onto her executive leadership committee. This closed the generation gap and allowed him to bring all of the younger employees' inputs and ideas to the table. She changed the once per year performance review to weekly check-ins, particularly to support the younger employees. And she also realized that better internal relationships would help. And so she added some new social events, and she put 2 millennials onto that to cook up some fun. And the results were significant because the senior executives now got to hear and value the inputs from the younger employees, which are already improving the way the company operates. And the millennials really enjoyed the additional support that was helping develop their potential on the go. And all the employees actually benefited from having more regular updates and help navigating the new business conditions. And reducing the gap between the generations was important, as well as fostering better relationships between the generations, which boosted everybody's willingness to listen, react positively, and collaborate. Productivity has increased significantly, and management problems have gone down. And like Pam, we can recognize, when we recognize other people's reactions and perspectives, that's going to help, and they can be very different. This research was done in 2016, looking ahead to next year. And the researchers did not expect to see such a huge discrepancy between how different executives at a company of different generations understood the preparedness of the company for the future. And if you think about it now in 2019, if any of those millennial executives were even partly right, how is their company doing right now? We all understand the world differently. And our backgrounds and viewpoints, they infuse the words that we use and their meaning. And that really struck me when I was with Rob, who's a boomer friend of mine, and he had asked Tim, who's 27, the first thing that came to mind when he read this phrase. What does it mean to you? Tim said, "Of course I'll be working all my life." Okay, that's not how Rob interpreted it, because for him, it was working at one company all your life and then hopefully getting a gold watch when you retired at 65. Because that was his reality when he entered the workforce. But for Tim, as many millennials, the Great Recession exposed the lack of job security and lack of corporate loyalty. And millions of millennials around the world are very aware of how underfunded pensions are, making retirement either unwise or unlikely. How about this word? What does career mean to you? Careers used to be linear, continuous, and compounding. And boomers would climb a vertical ladder, one singular vertical ladder. No more. An article in the Financial Times recommended that every individual plan for having 5 careers in their lifetime. 5. Careers are different. Promotions can be vertical or diagonal or lateral. Careers are non-linear, with many more job breaks, different work arrangements, and more. And younger employees recognize this, and they're trying to navigate it. And that was what was behind Janet's questions, which she was asking Matt. How long could this new company be home for me? Will he help develop my potential going forward into the future? And hard work. What does hard work mean? For older employees, it can mean suffering late nights working at the office. But for younger employees, it can be working efficiently with digital tools. And we're all aware that there are typical generational clashes between youthful disruptors and wise elders. And we have, Gen X who are calling millennials lazy, but in fact, boomers used to call Gen X slackers when they were the same age. The trouble is that these judgments can get in the way they can block our ability to try and understand somebody else's perspective and empathize. And so in just 3 simple examples, we can see how very different conditions and experiences can really change how we understand something. And that really makes a difference if we don't take into account somebody else's perspective. So let's look at a work scenario here. How do people feel when they look at this photo? Any particular reaction? Because research has actually shown that many boomers really don't appreciate having lots of laptops out on the table. Are people concentrating? Are they really distracted? Are they even looking at what they're supposed to be looking at when we're working together? But then this is what many classrooms look like. And so for millions of millennials and Gen Zs, this is what they're supposed to do when they're showing their teacher or professor that they're concentrating and they're taking notes and they're engaged. So different contexts and experiences really can change how people react and experience it. So how about this scenario? How does this make you feel? Think about it in your terms. We're going to come back to this a little bit later, but I want to just have you sort of register what you look at when you see this. What does it make you feel? And here's another scenario. So this is a Gen Z. He's been working at a company about 9 months, and he's just asked for a raise. Again, what does this make you feel? Think about a couple of adjectives that sort of summarize your thoughts. Okay, so we've been thinking about perspectives, differences, but how can we now use empathy to actually try and connect and close those gaps and work together more effectively? Adapting our mindsets and approaches so that we can understand, so we can go in with a different intention and have different outcomes from our intergenerational interactions and use the benefit of all our intelligence and understanding to adapt the ways we're working for these new business conditions. And that's empathy. When we use empathy, that is really going to help us understand each other. But why is empathy the key? And now you're going to do some work because we're going to do a little exercise to understand how important empathy is. What I'd like you to do is form pairs. The person sitting next to you or close to you. Okay? All right? Or somebody behind you or something? All right, so I'd also like you to come up with a scenario that happened maybe in the last month, which you had a difficult interaction with somebody at work. It could be a difficult conversation with a colleague or with your boss, a conversation that didn't go so well, and something you're prepared to share with the person you've never met who you're sitting next to now. Okay? Now, you're going to swap and take turns, but the person who has the shortest hair is going to start sharing. Wait, not yet, not yet, not yet. Okay, and the other person who's listening is not allowed to react at all. No nodding, no, none of that, stone-faced, still, absolutely no reaction. All right, so you're going to have 30 seconds, and then we're going to swap. Okay? Go. Share that problem, whatever happened. I see some nodding. Okay. Okay. Now, we're going to swap, and the other person's going to do it. And I did see some, okay, no emoting. I want stone face, please. All right, 30 seconds, go. All right, all right. Shh. Shh. So, how was that? It's hard, right? It's much harder than you think. I mean, when you're the one who's speaking, when you're the one who's sharing, it's actually really hard not to get any reaction whatsoever from the other person. And when you're the one listening, you really want to kind of go, oh yeah, totally good. Because some people really did not do this very well, I have to say. Okay, I'm just saying. But the point is, we are empathetic human beings. Frans de Waal, the Dutch primatologist, said, empathy is second nature to us. But empathy, you know, they say it's a soft skill, but it actually makes us much more aware. It actually puts us in a stronger position. And it is the lack of empathy in the workplace that has actually been causing, or at least exacerbating, some of our generational issues. So how does empathy work? Well, we have neurons in our brains that are activated when we feel an emotion. And we have mirror neurons that are triggered when we see an emotion playing out in someone else, but we feel it to a lesser degree. And Dr. Helen Rice of Harvard Medical School explains that these reactions motivate and teach us to act. So that if the emotion that we see and mimic is pain, we learn to avoid that pain, what caused that pain, and we also move to help the person in pain. Now, that helping behavior not only helps us feel good, but also it inspires reciprocal behavior in others in case we are the person in pain next time. And this behavior is actually the basis in all our human relationships of collaboration, cooperation, and reciprocity, which ensure the survival of our species, no less. And we can practice more empathy in the workplace to connect better and bridge our differences. A team of medical doctors were trained in empathy for just 3 hours. And when they went back on their rounds again, the patients felt more at ease and better cared for. So how can empathy help? How can it help when you are understanding and connecting with your coworker's point of view and emotions? What we're going to do is we're going to revisit, we're going to do some more work here, and revisit some of those scenarios to understand or put ourselves in the position and understand more of their thoughts and their feelings in those scenes. So I'd like you to keep with those pairs again, and we're going to think about this young woman and what's she going through. And I'd like you together to come up with 3 different possible situations as to why she is looking like that, what is she feeling, what is she going through. And I'm going to give you 30 seconds. These are going to be quick. Okay? Go. Okay. Shh. Okay, I heard some laughter, so I'm very interested to understand what those stories were. But now we're going to help her supervisor empathize with her situation. And I'd like you both, again, take half a minute to think of the questions that he can ask her to try and find out what's going on and why she's feeling like that. And we want to try and get her smiling again. So take 30 seconds just to think of some questions that are going to change the dynamics here. Okay. Okay. Shh. Shh. We don't have much time. I'd love to hear some of the answers, but this is more for you. And now we're going to go to this one. So first of all, I'd like to give you some additional information. And that is, first of all, that automation has eliminated many entry-level jobs. And so recent graduates are actually coming in 3 to 4 years ahead of previous generations in many cases. Gen Zs also expect, 75% of Gen Zs expect to get a promotion within 1 year. 32% within 6 months. And many Gen Zs are very anxious about financial security. Now, using that information, I'd like you to come up with 3 different stories as to why, and here's some quotes for you, why you are now this young man, why you just asked for a raise. I'll give you 30 seconds. Okay. Okay. Shh. And the last exercise is now you're going to put yourself, you're going to try and help that supervisor react positively, thinking about those stories. What questions can that supervisor ask? He's just heard this question. What questions can he ask this new hire to respond positively and find out what's going on with him? Last time, last 30 seconds. Okay. I think it's interesting to understand that when we consider other stories and we ask open questions, we can figure out what's really going on here, and conversations can have a very different outcome. Corporate conditions also matter a lot. And culture and values drive behavior for the people who work at or with your organization. Trust helps people feel safe and that they belong. And if we want people to share ideas openly, to listen to other people's perspectives, and to ask open questions, we need to adapt and develop stronger relationships and build trust. And when it comes to adapting our ways of operating, I'd like to emphasize 3 points. I love this guy. I have to share it. The first is flexible frameworks, and moving away from fixed structures to flexible frameworks in order to be able to react quickly to changing customer demands and grow in unpredictable circumstances. I met Colin, who is on the board of one of the electric scooter companies that's expanding rapidly across Europe. And he himself, he's an American, he's an entrepreneur, and has built and sold 2 or 3 ventures over the last 30+ years. And he told me, I couldn't have done what this CEO did, who's 29. I couldn't have built a company from the very beginning that was so spread out. From the very beginning, so many people working virtually, but feeling strongly connected. But now I could. Now that I've seen him do it, now I could. Colin recognized the CEO had a different approach. And now he saw how compelling that could be and how it could work, and so he was ready to adapt. When we can recognize and value other people's perspectives and ideas, we can use them to our benefit, and that is the extraordinary opportunity that we have now. We need to be able to work fast and respond fast. And that means integrating and embedding technology to operate effectively. Also, it's critical to be able to attract and retain not only millennials, but the Gen Zs who are coming into the workforce now. And then third, it's about enabling our workers to be able to optimize their work environments and conditions in order to be able to maximize their performance. Now that, wherever they're working, because now it's the reality that we have distributed and teams which are blended. This is the reality of the global mobile workforce. And I was I sat next to a young designer on a New York subway train, and she was working on her iPad. And she told me that she has a very tight drawing style. And so when she's working on a project that needs more fluidity, she goes and she works on the subway because the jiggles of the train help loosen her hand to get the effect that she needs. Brilliant. And her manager is focused on outcomes. So as executives and managers, what more can we do to help connect people across generations and establish effective work habits in this new environment? Command and control, directives from the top, are too linear, static, slow, and hierarchical. And now, inclusive and responsive leadership approaches are to push accountability down and out across organizations so that people closer to the front line can make informed, timely decisions, as well as feeling trusted, valued, and connected. An active managerial involvement is critical to establish new work habits that incorporate empathy and encourage distributed, blended teams to be able to collaborate across generations, functions, and locations, and respond quickly and effectively. Older managers can connect with younger employees having important career development conversations. And these conversations are really important in order to show the company's commitment to the future. The number one reason that millennials leave is they don't see any visibility to their future path. Arranging cross-generational mentoring pairs is also very helpful for creating relationships and being able to share technology and experiences bidirectionally. And last of all, social activities are essential for helping find common ground, create shared experiences, which allows people to empathize more easily. And I recommend in-person activities as well as virtual. And in fact, happy hour over video chat is one of my favorites. So we are all struggling to work effectively in this new evolving business environment that is so unpredictable. We have an opportunity to really understand and tap into all the insights and experience perspectives of our whole workforce. We can lead and manage engaged, inclusive, integrated, thriving, multi-generational companies and teams. Together, with empathetic mindsets and approaches, we can figure it out. Together, we can reimagine work. Thank you.